Yep to the yep. You already know what time it is. It's your girl P.O.C. Turn your radios up, spread the word, spread the message. You already know how we come in each and every time. We reviving airways. We live right now on 900 AM WRD, 96.1 FM WURD Radio. I am your new host of the ECO WURD each and every Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. I'm excited to be on this Friday because I brought, some amazing people. This is like an amazing trifecta for me right now when it comes to these two individuals. So I'm really excited to be blessing the airways with them, making sure that we educate and re-educate you all. So make sure you give us a call, and don't forget we are live right now on Facebook Live at Word. So make sure you check us out as well. And if you want to find more information about me, you can find me at revive_POC on all social medias. And my website is reviveisalive.com. Yes, reviveisalive.com. But right now we got the one and only the Black Dr. Phil on the line. He's not new to this station, and you definitely know this voice by now. Yo, Phil, what's up? How you feeling today? Just good morning.
I'm good. I'm good. How you feeling?
I'm good, man. It's Friday. We all right now we're in Alabama celebrating NABJ. So I'm excited about that. We're gonna have a lot to talk about next week when we get on air about, just what we did while we were here in Birmingham. So I'm feeling good, bro. How you feeling?
Listen, it's another day. It's another day trying to take over the world, trying to stop the dastardly folk from doing what they do. that's, that's pretty much the game, man. That's pretty much the game.
I'm with it. And you already know we got the one and only, the best intern in the city right now, Abigail. Abby, what's doing? How you feeling this morning?
I feel great. I'm happy to be here. Happy to be a part of, such a important aspect of what we doing. It's for the community, eco word, environment. They don't talk about the environment a lot, so I'm glad to
Yes.
be a part of it.
No doubt. And I mean, let's just start there, right? Because we are some new faces to and new voices to this Eco Word magazine that they're starting here at WRD, So just, Phil, I want to ask you, when you think of environmental justice, I know we kind of tapped into it a little bit, on our previous shows and our conversations, but just for this sake of this conversation, how would you describe environmental justice?
Yeah, I think for so much of the work that I do and other individuals who are like steeped in this idea of Black liberation, where we're talking about actual physical lives and pushing back against these historically racist and unjust systems, we don't necessarily think about the environment and how environmental injustice is a form of racism that, and it's become an acceptable form of racism. So when we think about the water supply in Flint, I was just listening to a podcast by, what's the podcast person's name? Math Hoffa, who is formerly a battle rapper, and he had Robert Kennedy Jr. on, and Robert Kennedy Jr. was talking about how, and I'm not a fan of his by any stretch of the imagination. He's
I would say,
extremely,
whoa.
he was extremely problematic in so many ways. But he talked about, he had sued the city, or he was looking at the water infrastructure within the city, and he noticed on this map for the water supply within a certain area, it was black.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it was deemed to be unhealthy water supply within New York. However, within this place is where the mayor lived, but that was the only place. And again, out of the irony in it, it was a one white speck, and that's where good water would go into, and it was going into the mayor's house. But in the surrounding areas, the water was at unhealthy levels.
Mm-hmm.
So and I didn't get too much into him because I can only stand to listen to him talk for so long. But and I bring that up because that is a form of environmental injustice that and racism. And Math Hoffa, as much issues I have with him and just having this individual on the platform, they pushed back against him because he was like, I don't necessarily think of it's racism. And the one guy sitting there, he was just like, well, how is it not racism if
Yeah.
it's impacting a location that in black and brown folk inhabit? And Robert Kennedy Jr., y'all people's not mine, who's running for president, right? He didn't have a response to that. But this goes to show that there's so many things that are taking place that are impacting black and brown folk disproportionately that we aren't mindful of because we're worried about the visible enemy, and the visible enemy being the legal system and the educational system, things that are tangible that we can see.
Those boys that's wearing the red, white, and blue. You know what I mean? For sure.
Word.
And I like that breakdown that you said when it comes down to people just really being ignorant and not knowing that it's racism. Like they don't even get it. It doesn't even come across to them that they're being racist or this is a part of a racist system when it comes down to the environment and just simply like things that are affecting marginalized communities like the water, like the air pollution. And Abby, I want to get you into this conversation because you're teeter-totting between two cities. You go to school in New York, but you're here from Philadelphia, based in the city. So when you think about environmental justice, especially in these two cities right now, what's your thoughts on it as a student journalist?
Well, growing up, I had asthma. I mean, I somewhat still have asthma. It's a lot better now. But just being from Southwest, where we're not too far from where they burn the trash and like it's all those refinery, whatever them Jones called, but they putting the pollution in the air. I was just kind of used to that until like I went to different neighborhoods and I'm meeting new kids at like NYU who come from Connecticut and they got nice air or better air and like they have big houses and land. And I'm like, oh snap, like where you from and the things that like you grow up around really affects your health and things like that. And so when they came to New York, they're like, yo, I can't breathe. I'm like, bro, it kind of low-key the same over here. But, yeah, New York is also very terrible, especially because there's not a lot of trees in the city. Mm-hmm. So when I tell you it's hot, like Philly is hot, but New York is like all buildings and the heat is just bouncing off the glass. It's terrible. It's a terrible experience. It's crazy because New York used to be full of trees. Mm-hmm. And when we think about the indigenous people who live there, like before they start building the city, it's just like, yo, like this is not what it used to be like. And it's crazy how when we do things to the earth is going to let us know like this is not supposed to happen. And climate change is going to show in different ways, like heat waves. Mm-hmm. And like there's not trees to cool us down. So we're hot, we're sweating, we could pass out, things like that. That was a little rant, but it's also crazy. Sorry, last thing I'm going to say, it's also crazy because my grandmother has like dementia, and I was just reading the other day, like one of the main causes or something that could influence dementia is like pollution because of what it does to the DNA. And just this is crazy how like your environment really can shape your brain structure as well. So yeah.
No, that's a really big thing for sure, for sure. And for those who's just tuning in, you're listening to your girl P.O.C. I'm your host of the ECO WURD magazine each and every Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Don't forget, you can give us a call. Everything we do is a FUBU effect. 215-634-8065, toll free 1-866-361-0900. And we're also live on Facebook. But I need you all to make sure you go hit that follow button on ECO WURD on Instagram. So again, follow us on Instagram at ECO WURD. That is the new place where you need to be so you can stay locked with your girl P.O.C. man, each and every Friday, again 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. And I want to ask you, Phil, because we were just recently earlier talking with our guest Bilal, and he was talking about him being from the city of Chester, and I asked him a specific question based on what former candidate Jeff Brown, who was running for mayor, said about the city of Chester, about the trash coming from other cities, or specifically coming from Philadelphia, going to Chester is a Chester problem. It's not a Philadelphia problem. It's not something we need to worry about because we're paying Chester to take the trash. You know what I'm saying? So when it comes down to environmental justice and we speak about marginalized communities and we speak about Black and brown people, is it our problem? Like, is there something that we need to worry about or we need to do? I mean, of course we worried about it, but is there something that we need to take charge in as far as being the leader of this type of conversation? Or do we wait to the people who are super environmental friendly to jump out there and say, these things are happening in your community, sign this petition, and then we want to get serious? Like, how do you think we should attack these situations of injustice?
Well, I think you highlighted it. You highlighted the importance of education. So if I have information, if I'm in these environmental justice streets, I'm doing the readings, I'm doing the research, I'm in these different spaces. When we talk again about this idea of just Black education in general, it was always our responsibility for those of us who would go to an HBCU to take the information that we learned and bring it back to the community. And unfortunately, whether it's not enough of us who inhabit these spaces, right, to where we can become educated on what's taking place. It can be difficult because if you're worrying about your next paycheck, if you're worrying about your next meal, if you're worrying about safety and all of these things, somebody talking about the air is going to ring on hollow ears, because that's something, unless I'm going to die today from 190-degree weather, then you can miss me with that, which is understandable, because I have to be around to even be able to be impacted by this continuous increase in climate. But it's our responsibility, those of us who are in the know, hence the reason why it is dope that you have this program, to bring that information back to the people, because that's what it's about. When we talk about the supermarket man, he in the comments that he made regarding Chester, that goes.
You are hilarious. I just got what you said. The
what?
Supermarket man. Oh, Phil, that was good.
And listen, the supermarket man, he did my homie Zane Booker, who has a
Zane,
store.
Yes.
Yeah, who has a store in one of his supermarkets.
In Southwest.
Yeah, so a broken clock is right twice a day, right? So he was right for that. But when he makes comments about Philadelphia is not worried about Chester, and I'm sure folk been listening, waiting for me to say it, this is a white supremacist mentality where it's about individual. In this sense, Philadelphia being the individual. But for Black folk, we've always been about community. And that's why when we hear something, oh, it's a Chester problem, we think about the Black folk in Chester, we thinking about the Black folk in Delaware County, we think about the Black folk, because for us, it's always been a community thing. So if you're talking about them, then what's stopping you from talk about us in such a negative light and blaming us? So but yeah, it's important to bring this type of information back to the people.
For sure. And Abby, I want to get you in because you were actually on the call, earlier as we spoke to our first guest, Bilal, and he spoke about, his thoughts on people not necessarily taking the citizens and the residents of Chester serious when it comes to their health and their insecurities at the same time, because they live in a city like Chester of only 30,000 people. So let me get your input.
Yeah, I mean, it's big companies like not looking out for minorities. It's like we see it in the government. I mean, this ain't new, it's sad to say, but this is just how they operate. It's crazy because, oh man, it just reminds me, like, I remember I took like a class trip to Greece. We did like some volunteering work, trying to save the turtles and whatnot. And when I tell you the air there was so crazy, like it's crazy, but like they take care of their environment and they have those type of solutions because like their population is mainly homogenous. Everybody there is the same. Like the racism there, they still racist, if you're a person of color, but primarily the minority percent is they don't have to worry about it because it's little to none. So they can come together and build things and care about each other. But when we live in a society where we actually living in America and we can't be ignored, but also our voice isn't loud enough, so it's this weird place we're in where we're trying to advocate for the things that we care about, but still we don't have enough power. But it's frustrating. I got a lot of people in Chester too who've been talking about the same thing for years. So it's like, I don't know, man, because don't they got shot rights in Chester too?
Well, these are specific. I don't want to make this conversation about this guy at all, but I specifically talk about brown shot rights, which are two different things. Brown shot rights and shot rights are two different things.
All right.
But I do want to go back, into the conversation of, just environmental justice in general. Because when you think about environmental justice, Abby, you mentioned like this is not new. But to some people, this is completely new, just the word climate change, when you think about the climate as far as recycling and people not having bags in grocery stores no more. Like some people are just simply upset about these things and they don't want the, what was deemed or what was seen as normal at one point to change because this is all they know. So when you think about, or you talk about the statement that this is not new, how do you break this down for people who the subject is new to, like how do you explain climate change and environmental justice to someone who has been in a space of police brutality? Phil, what's your thoughts on that?
Repeat that for me one more time.
Because Abby mentioned that this is not new, and she was saying in a broad general statement, like when it comes to environmental justice, this is not something that's new, but the topic or the wording, the vocabulary that's attached to it is new to certain people, right?
Yeah.
So when you think about environmental justice and you're having a conversation again about marginalized people, we're talking about brown and black people, or black and brown people specifically. A lot of them, the only thing they're thinking about is not getting those red, blue and white lights behind their car. They're not they're thinking about their sons getting pulled over, their daughters getting pulled over at traffic lights. They're thinking more of like police brutality when they hit the streets in their environments. You know what I mean? They're looking left and right to check over their shoulder to make sure their car not about to get jacked. They're not looking left and right to make sure there's no trash on the ground, or to see if the recycling bins are out, or just to see if we have public restrooms so feces don't be everywhere. Like, those thoughts are not really running through people's mind, because Philadelphia smell like urine is just a smell that Philadelphia smells like at this point. You know what I mean? So no one's thinking that this is a problem of environmental justice because we don't have any public restrooms. And if we had public restrooms, there'll be unhoused people actually able to go and utilize these public restrooms, versus us just having trash and feces everywhere in our streets. So my question to you is simply, when it comes down to having this new conversation with our communities, how do we approach it to the point where they can understand?
So again, I think you highlighted this. It's about the language that's used. I'll make an analogy to the SATs, and I heard my old head, Dr. Carr, Howard University Africana Studies professor, he brought this up a few months ago. It like the scuttlebutt back when the SATs, like the 90s, it's like, yo, this is an extremely biased test. And so we think about like the questions, go behind the couch. And you're like, wait, what? Couch? I don't have no idea what couch is. But for Black folk, it might be sofa. It might be called something else, right? And so it's analogous in that Black folk are aware about the environment and environmental changes. It's when that old head and, myself, because I could be like, Abby, what was you doing in 1996, right? You don't remember the blizzard. I don't think you was alive, but you don't remember the blizzard of 96 that shut schools down, right? Old heads have those conversations like, yo, back in 96, we didn't go to school because it was all this blizzard. Now it's a little bit of snow on the ground, or just the possibility of a little frosting, and now they're canceling school and all of this. What they're highlighting is climate change. What they're highlighting is global warming. So when we get the language and we are able to relate it to them in that way, they're able to say, oh, so this is climate change. The fact that 30 years later, it's barely snowing as opposed to 1996. Again, is taking that information and that language and being able to convey it to a population who doesn't necessarily understand the jargon, but they understand the underlying ideas and concepts about it.
For sure. If you're just now tuning in, you already know what time it is, man. It's your girl, P.O.C. I'm on the line right now with the one and only, the Black Dr. Phil, and the best intern in the city right now, Abigail Chang. Abby, I want to get you back into the conversation as well. When you talk about the conversation, how we approach people, how do you feel like is the best way to approach people, especially being a student? Because your generation, y'all at each other's neck, y'all at people's neck, y'all at the next generation's neck, you know what I mean? Like, y'all want climate change to really be a part of the conversation. And I appreciate that. I appreciate the Generation Z for really wanting climate change to be at the point of the conversation. I remember when Jaden Smith just jumped out with that Just Water box, and everybody jumped on, and I was like, why? What is this a fad of? And that actually helped me to, jump into what climate change was as far as just that trend. I was like, let me research this. So now I understood a little bit more. So coming from the Generation Z, what's your thoughts on it?
So I feel like it's important, like, for people, bringing in people in the conversation of climate change, it's important to look at the history of America, period. Because when we talk about the Industrial Revolution, when we start building those steel factories in Pittsburgh, and people was dying and coughing at work, and was like, oh, like, we need to start a workers' unions. When we look at the history of things like that, where it was primarily like, you know, when it was white people working in these factories, like, yo, we got a problem with this. Like, our kids are getting sick. They said, okay, well, all right, cool. Like, let's actually shut these down, since these people are protesting, people are doing things, right? So I feel like what happened was, this is just, you know, this is my theory. I mean, you know, we got the history to back it up, but, you know, I ain't gonna say this fact or fiction or whatever. But I feel like, you know, it makes a difference. Like, when you have white people protesting something, saying that this infects their environment, I feel like they just picked up these factories, dropped them right in the hood. And now, you know, these people have their white picket fence, everything's cool, and they make their money at their job. But, you know, it's just, I mean, I remember I read this one book. It was like, I forgot. It was like a book on immigration, and this guy was like coming from Germany, and he worked in like one of those steel factories, and his hard knock life, you know, had to work, you know. And then he joined a union, and they protested. And this is like based on a true story. I don't remember what the book is called, but like they protested and they shut the factory down because people was like getting their arms cut off and all that stuff. It was a terrible thing. But it's like these same factories, maybe not the same factories, but the same thing. Like, even when we were talking to Bilal the other day, he was like, yo, the work in there affected
this morning. I mean, he was our guest
this morning. I'm so sorry. My fault. My brain is everywhere. My brain is everywhere. We was talking to him this morning. He was like, yeah, working in the factory like affected him, like his health. So it's like these things don't change. Like, they might get quote unquote better, but it's really the same. And I think like looking at history to see how things kind of repeat itself and just negatively impact us. And yeah, if that makes sense.
For sure. And, you know, when people talk about, you know, environmental justice, they always like kind of chalk it up to trees and water and recycling and things of that nature. But I think environmental justice plays a huge role, like when it comes to like food deserts, when it comes to traffic lights being out, when it comes to street lights not being working properly. Like, I think environmental justice is bigger than just grass, trees, and water. And I kind of have a lot of feedback that I go back and forth with when I have this conversation. That's why I'm super happy to be the new host of ECO WURD, because I want to have these open conversations, these open dialogues with others. And, you know, Phil, I want to get your opinion, you know, when it comes down to just the overall expansion of environmental justice. Do you feel like other factors play a role, or it simply just comes down to the trees, grass, and rainwater?
No, it's, you know, when we look at this idea of environmental justice, just to talk about what Abby was referencing, and just the change, the money is much bigger. Mm-hmm. The interest is much larger, and it's where you hear the conversations about super PACs and who's paying the politicians. Yeah. You see politicians all the time getting arrested, local politicians and national politicians who come under fire because they're getting a paycheck from a real estate agent, a real estate mogul. They're getting influenced by the Heritage Foundation and different places. The money is different. Yeah. And so hence the reason why, you know, folk are doing their darndest to, in folk, we talk about white folk, we talk about Republicans, to repeal a lot of these things, is because this individuality, this rugged individualism, they gonna look out for me. And then I can be with Clarence Thomas. He got his people who are putting him on a private jet. I can have my own people to meet Clarence somewhere on my private jet, right? So
I thought that was your man's. That's not your man's right now.
No, I think I you know, my thing is Clarence is a lot more complex than we want to acknowledge. But and just this idea of environmental justice, yes, it's so much more than recycling. I think you brought up like distribution, you brought up procedural types of things, and how all of these come together. And if we're mindful of it and we start to look at various components, we start to see the real life impact of what we're seeing today.
Yeah. And Abby, you know, I want to get you into the conversation as well. You know, when it comes down to environmental justice, I kind of have a conversation. I never want to say an argument, but a conversation with a lot of folks about this topic, because, you know, some people want to just simply chalk it up to, like what Phil said, recycling, grass, trees, and rainwater, but not necessarily talking about the environment, like what people are being exposed to, like gun violence, like food deserts, like not having transportation to and from schools. Those things are a part of environmental justice, in my opinion. And that's why we're here to have these conversations. Remember, man, you can always give us a call. Everything we do is a FUBU effect. 215-634-8065. Toll free, 1-866-361-0900. We are live right now on 900 AM WRD, 96.1 FM. I'm your new host of ECO WURD each and every Friday, 10 a.m. to 6 a.m. I got my intern on the line with me, Abby. Talk to me, Abby. When it comes down to what is environmental justice and what's a part of it, do you think it's just trees and grass?
It's definitely not just trees and grass. Everything that we're living in, wherever your environment is and the injustices you're facing in, that's everything that encapsulates that. Like, I was just thinking too, like potholes, like everything you're listing, potholes is another thing, because if you live in a rough area where they just putting the cones down, and like literally I just did like man on the street interviews the other day asking people, and there's this one man who was telling me his experience of potholes. He's originally from Puerto Rico, and he was telling me, out of my 30 years of living in Philadelphia, I've noticed like they fix the potholes in the nicer areas, where if you live in Southwest, you live in South, like he's like, you better, he said potholes is just the way of life. Yeah. And it was funny, but it was sad, because I'm like, I met two people at the park whose cars literally got broke, like the front of their car came off because they hit a pothole, and that's just something they have to deal with. I know the city helped one of the people I've talked to, but the second guy was like, yo, they ain't doing nothing, like this is just what we have to deal with. So that's another part, because if you drive down Lower Marion, them smooth back roads, it's the nicest little drive you ever took in your life, nicest, and you wonder like, okay, I see where they tax money going, and you just see where's my tax money going? Like, what's going on here? And it's really just priorities. Like, we're not seeing the same. That's really what it comes down to. So that's environmental justice as well.
I wanted to bring up, because when it was started having me thinking about, when you're talking about Lower Marion, I just got a water bill, right? And so I'm a homeowner, unfortunately, here in the city of Philadelphia. I'm thankful to have a home, but it's extremely difficult for homeowners here in the city. I literally got a water bill. My water bill was about $60 some odd. I used maybe $20 worth of water during the month. The other $35 is a service charge. Right. So when we're talking about environmental justice, we're talking about things that are truly impactful on a lower level, things that we're not even necessarily thinking about. Right. So we're paying a $30 service charge to connect for some basic water. Right. A human need
that we got to boil before we even drink it in the first place.
That part, right?
That part. And it's crazy that you bring this up, because I thought I was being very petty and childish about it. P.O.C kind of has the same thing. Like, before you pay your P.O.C bill, you have to pay a processing fee to use your debit card, unless you go and you drop the actual payment off, or you type in your banking account information, like the routing and account number, versus just your debit card. And I actually get upset every time I pay my electricity bill, because I'm paying an additional almost $3 to the bill just to process a payment for utilities. I can see that for, a ticket to go to a concert, or, to do something of entertainment sources, you know what I'm saying? But for utilities, for them to be having a processing fee, that's beyond me. Because what are you doing that you need to charge me an extra fee to go ahead and, utilize my utility, or to pay the utility bill in the first place?
Yeah. And with that, we're talking about what? We're talking about access, because thankfully I have the fiscal means to be able to pay this outrageous charge. But there are so many people. I've had my days down at the water company with the rest of them, because I'm like, I forget about paying, and you just sitting there, and people trying to get on payment plans who don't necessarily have the funds. But again, we're talking about when we're talking about the systemic racism aspect of it, and just this overall disinvestment that takes place, especially in major metropolitan cities, we meaning Black and brown folk, experience the brunt of it. Why? Because we don't have the wealth that our white counterparts have. Right.
That's a real thing, man. I appreciate you both for coming through today, rocking with me on this Friday morning, blessing the airways, reviving the airways, making sure that people getting that information that's for them and about them so we can educate and re-educate, because this is what it's all about, especially every time I'm reviving your airways on ECO WURD Magazine. Again, each and every Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. You can also check out the podcast online at wordradio.com. So make sure you go to wordradio.com and check out everything that ECO WURD has to offer. It's so much that we're going to be doing with this magazine. So I need you all to check out and stay locked with me. Again, you can find more information about ECO WURD on Instagram at ECO WURD. Once again, that's ECO WURD. We just made that page for you. Yes, you. Everything we do is a FUBU effect. So definitely make sure you hit that follow button, like, and subscribe today. Abby, tell people how they can find your newsletter. I mean, not your newsletters, your new articles you just dropped as well for Philadelphia Citizen.
Yes, guys. So if you Google Abigail Chang at the Philadelphia Citizen, you'll find my recent works. And yeah, just stay tuned.
No doubt. Phil, how can people find more information about you?
You can hit me up on all social media platforms, Phil_Roundtree. You can Google me, Dr. Philip Roundtree. Check out the hashtag You Good Men Men's Wellness podcast. And this month being Black August, salute to all the revolutionaries. We are doing a special 4-part series where we're talking with community members who are doing revolutionary things, rhetorically speaking, on YouTube.
No doubt, man. Big shout out to Dylan, the producer of the ECO WURD Magazine, always holding it down behind the scenes, making sure I got what I need to revive these airways. We'll be right back next Friday, starting at 10 a.m. We have some amazing special guests, an amazing lineup. We got a jam-packed show for you each and every time I go live, man. Again, revive_P.O.C on all social sites. And you can follow me, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or you can go directly to my website at revive_P.O.C. We are live right now in Birmingham, Alabama for the NABJ conference, man. I'm excited. Thank you both, Phil and Abby, for making this happen on this Friday morning. I look forward to an amazing weekend with you both, man. Have a great rest of your weekend. Peace.
Peace.